Hey guys, welcome back to the workshop. I'm Steven. You usually do not see me on this side of the camera. I'm the cameraman usually. But today I have the privilege of talking with Lucas Burnley, a new good friend of mine. And today we get to talk about design and process with knife making.
Super fun.
So let's watch. Okay, well, first thing I want to talk about is, you know, I've known about you for a long time, but I started following you on Instagram because I saw some of your posts about the Convergence show you did. And I just saw, you showed the process of making those different knives with the materials and just like, I am not necessarily someone I would consider a knife person, but as soon as I saw that stuff, I was kind of freaking out, just like, whoa, that is super cool. Like, it's just cool. It looked cool. Everything was just so well thought out in the materials, the different textures. So why don't you just tell me about that show a little bit?
Kind of funny, especially since that was like your intro. I think Convergence came about wanting to do, not wanting to do something different necessarily, but wanting to give like a different experience.
Okay.
Right. So anytime a maker's getting ready for a show, like we're focused on like the materials and like what we're building. A lot of times you're going to a trade show, you're laying product flat on a table, you're selling through the product's gone. It lacks, like for me, it lacks like a certain closure almost. And so the idea with Convergence was to like present the work in a gallery format.
Sure.
Which like for most arts, like that's the way it's presented anyway. Right. It's a really like common format. In the knife world, it's not.
It's not white walls, fine arts.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And there are exceptions to that rule, but it's usually fine art knives.
Yeah.
And so the thought with it was that the way that I feel a lot of our collectors interact with the work, like they're appreciating it like art and design.
Okay.
But when we're at trade shows, we're selling it like a commodity trade show product almost. And so we wanted to see like, okay, can we bring in like our collectors into a new space? Do they experience the work different? Like even like small things, right? Like, so you buy a knife, you don't get to take it with you. It stays on the wall or it stays on the stand. And what I loved about it was it kind of create, even in the like the evening, it creates like this little ecosystem of like someone who is knowledgeable just purchased this knife, someone who is coming into the gallery who has never seen custom knives. Person is very proud of the knife that they just bought and is able to explain it to someone who has no concept of like what they're looking at. And I love, so that's like one element of like the Convergence, right?
Sure,
you're like,
sure.
you're bringing in different thought processes.
Yeah, sure.
That was a big part of it. And then also at shows, they're usually so frantic that I don't really get to spend time with my collectors. And so we wanted to do something that felt like kind of like concierge level. Like we let 2 people in at a time. We didn't do any lotteries. Whoa. We didn't do any auctions, which like for trade shows, we always do. This was the work is available if you're there. And I mean, we had it on Cape Cod, which is like 3 hours to the nearest airport. So like it was a commitment for people to come.
Sure.
So yeah, that was a big part of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So leading up to that event, obviously you brought, you brought these with you, which is
this
super
was
cool.
the only thing that I had left from like the show as a concept.
So it was a patina study.
Yep.
All copper is what you said.
All copper.
But like, my curiosity is like, how did you figure out how to do this? Like me as a designer, when I don't know how to do something, like I have a running list of places I can go in my head.
Right.
YouTubers I can follow. Like, how do you figure out how to do that?
So this, like, kind of like the reason that I came up here to visit you guys, where if there's something that I want to know, I realize there's someone who knows how to do it at like a specialist level. Right. So I went and I did a course with an artist named David Huang, who does copper vessel work and a huge amount of patinas. So his work is all like raising.
Yeah.
But the patina work that he does it's like completely different than anything I had experienced.
Okay.
It's all involving like multiple chemicals and layering and heat. Super, super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that tied into this idea of convergence too, which is like, okay, like new skills and old skills. Like I've been doing patina work for probably 15 years, but only within this like limited scope, like usually around like Cypops and like, you know, verdigris and like trying to get like certain kind of colors.
Yeah, sure.
And so like, all right, like how do I integrate this into my modern work? Like,
Sure.
You know, so that was, I think that was part of it too, was just this idea of like, as a maker, I jump around
Right.
a lot. Like
Yeah.
I always say, like for me, like style of no style is the goal.
Yeah.
I want to be able to work in like a genre or a like a mode for a period of time and then like move on
Yeah.
or like pull from. So
Totally.
the patina study ended up essentially doing, you know, you do a 2x3 plate, it's very different than how that is actually going to interact when it's scaled down to the size of a knife.
Yeah, sure.
So the study aspect of that was like, how do these patinas that I learned to create actually work in a, you know, in a finished piece?
Okay, gotcha. Is there ever, because there's such a cool mixture of different inlays or, you know, textures and patinas and materials, is there ever too much for you? Like, is there a point when you're like, this is too many different things slammed together, or is there like a beautiful place where it makes sense?
Oh, I think you can definitely, I mean, that's like true of any design.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like too much is too much.
Yep.
Unless that's like specifically what you're going for, like this maximalist like vibe.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, it's usually there's a balance point, but because I'm making it, I'm seeing it progress as I go.
Yeah.
So I feel like I at least have like a thought to that as it progresses, as opposed to like, oh, here's all the pieces, it gets put together, and I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Like, why did I do that? But there were pieces from that run that didn't work out.
Okay.
Like, oh, this pattern worked great, but when you shrink it down to a 1/2 inch wide strip, you lose all of like the visible elements.
Okay, gotcha. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I think with knives especially, I think like some of the materials like Damascus and like the pattern welded titaniums, I think it can be really easy just to get like to a point where you just used all the premium materials, but they don't actually like, they're not in harmony.
Yeah, sure. So with this too, I think, you know, maybe one of my last questions, but have you seen anyone else do this in the, you know, the knife world?
I mean,
patinas?
yeah, there's definitely people that do patina work. These I worked into like a kind of a Japanese pattern fixed blade, so it's underneath the cord wrapping.
Sure. Yep.
And one of the things about that process was patinas, they change and they wear. They're not like super durable.
Yeah.
So if you like did a knife handle in that patina or one of those patinas, it's gonna eventually just be gone.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha, yeah.
But in the context of, you know, Tsukomaki, which is like the cord wrapping, it's protected by these little pockets.
Yeah.
So I think figuring out like how and when to use a material or finish plays a big part into kind of knife making in general.
Cool.
Right?
Cool. Do we have that knife here?
We have one of the, I think I brought one of the cord wrap knives, but no patina underneath.
Sure.
But yeah, that's.
So it's not the patina, but
Right.
Explain to me that underlayment on that knife, because once again I look at that,
Yeah.
it's just, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah,
It's
so
super cool.
It's stingray skin.
Okay.
And that's like traditionally used in like Japanese swords. This material is shaved, so the denticles are round. They shave it, and then there's an application of like a fiber optic that's hand painted.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. And for me, they're fun to play with because it's a lot of color.
Yeah.
Just something kind of different in a lot of knives that I've done over the years where they're pretty dark, like, you know, heavy kind of tactical vibes.
Sure.
It's fun to do like a rainbow.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a balance.
Yeah.
So you said they use this in Japanese knives?
The stingray skin specifically, this is like a more modern interpretation of it.
Okay.
And I've never seen it on a product.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know where it exists other than these. I'm sure it does, obviously.
Sure.
But
Well, it's just really cool. I'm wondering, like, at a macro scale, where do you pull influence from? Like, when you're making knives, when you're making side pops or anything, like, where's your, like, for me as a designer, I would say, like, I love to go to like a thrift store junking, and I find old labels or old cans, and it's just like,
totally.
as a graphic designer, it almost makes me feel like a little inept because we've already peaked in graphic design. We're just trying to remake all this cool old stuff.
Yeah.
So
where do you branding?
Where do you pull?
I mean, there's a similar element that happens with knives. I'm a nerd, and I go back in history and I try to like figure out kind of the different genres of knife making. In the custom world, our history is actually like fairly short. You know, like especially in the United States, custom makers. So it's fun to kind of integrate elements of knives over the course of like custom knife history. Past that, I mean, it's weird because and I would guess this is true for you too, like you build on your own visuals.
Yep.
Right. So that's like iterative. And then I think environmental. So like the tuna is a folder that I started building when we moved to Cape Cod. And it was just inspired by like a different visual component of life. So like we were on the ocean and there's all these boats and there's people fishing. And tuna didn't look like anything I had designed before that. It was purely environmental. It wasn't made to look like a fish, but it was all this like iconography and kind of design language that I just hadn't been around before.
Yeah, sure. And so it totally looks streamlined too, right?
Right. It's like kind of like moving forward, like going fast. And that was like, I think it's like hull design.
Yeah.
Probably just some stuff like I caught. And I was like, oh, that's like a cool.
Oh, it's really interesting.
That's a cool line.
Yeah, because the handle itself, the way it tapers towards the end is, I haven't really seen that before, but
it gets like real totally thin. Like, so you're like, oh, if you like look at it like tuna, like it was unintentional in the moment, but then I realized I'm like, oh, I just am seeing different lines. And then there's the element that a knife is a tool. So you have like, you're working within a functional set of boundaries. So it's trying to figure out like where, honestly, like I don't actively seek inspiration, I guess.
Okay.
I just like, for the most part, I just work.
Yeah.
And then like I design and little things will come out and I'll chase that like thought process. Yeah.
That's super cool.
It's pretty fun.
Well, something you were saying earlier is that you don't chase trends, right? You try to make them,
right?
And obviously there's success and failure,
hit or miss sometimes.
So, I mean, I love that philosophy. And so, does that mean like, say the industry is going one way, you know, everyone's making mini cleavers, right? You go the opposite way? Is that how it?
I don't even think it's as intentional as that.
Yeah.
I just don't. I connect to my work better when it's my work.
Okay.
I think, right? And so for me, like I would rather see things that are reminiscent of my design style than see like a lot of other people's work in my designs.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And that said, like I'm inspired by makers constantly.
Yeah. I
think that the ability to take design influence and integrate it into your own work like is hugely valuable. I don't think it should be like recognizable.
Yeah.
So what are you borrowing from? What are you inspired by? Because there's a difference between like inspiration and imitation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yep. And you don't want to be caught on that.
Yeah, it's just not interesting.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, let's move on to this guy right here.
Sure.
I mean, this is cool. So, here, I'm gonna let you open.
All right. This is the ODC.
Okay.
So organized daily carry. So as like everyday carry stuff is like continued to be popular, like you see the amount of different pieces that people are carrying.
Yeah.
So like this idea is basically like it's like an organizer for a backpack.
Yeah, sure.
So the goal was you can have a few special pieces in it that don't run into each other, and like have some basic functionality. So it's basically just like it's like a trapper keeper.
That's super sweet.
For like knives and side pops and really I designed it around like this is a little sleeve for a side pop. This is, I kind of designed it for the SQD, but fits like other folders. I've got a tuna in there right now.
Nice.
Flashlight, pen, marker, field notes, which as a design guy, you have to love Draplin.
Yeah, let's go.
He's the man.
Yeah.
So anytime I can work that in. And then I thought this was pretty fun. I worked in a work shirt piece. So
yeah, that's pretty
I think
sweet.
that fits
Check that out.
pretty well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and like you were saying, I mean, that's the shape of a side pop right there.
Pretty
Like,
good.
aesthetically, it's
I love
more or
it.
less the same.
I love it. I did well, and it fits into just a size format. I love the idea that you can have like a little toolkit inside of your EDC kit.
Totally.
Yeah, the timing just worked out really well on this. That I had this, and I was like, oh, like where can we put it?
Yeah.
Like this is so, I feel like so EDC friendly.
Yeah,
Like just
totally.
as a concept.
Yep.
Like I just want a Burnley edition in brass. Like
Let us know down below if that's something you guys want to see too.
This is the fun thing of like knife design, making in general. I like the process.
Yeah.
So being able to jump from something like knife to a soft good, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, like this ecosystem of like network and friends. Like I'm very lucky that I have friends who are like very talented and in a lot of ways smarter than I am. So this is with a company called Paladin 33 who's in Bend.
Cool.
And like it's rad. Like this is all very compliant. Like every piece in there is sourced in the United States down to the thread, because that's what their business
cool.
runs. Like
Right.
pretty fun, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah, I love that. So Burnley brand,
Yeah.
as you know, like as a whole, is
Sure.
it's got to be nice to be able to have something where it's just like this. We want to make something. This is something I need, or it's something I want,
right.
and it's probably like for you, just like you get to go in a completely different direction design wise, right? So
Yeah, that was the goal with it when we started it. It was like kind of like the basic was anything I did that wasn't custom. So it wasn't a custom knife that came out of the shop, or wasn't a knife.
Yeah.
So something like the Cypop.
Right.
If we do apparel, it goes under Burnley brand, because like most knife makers, my knife company is Burnley Knives. It's my last name, and you put knives on it, and that's it.
Right.
But I realized like it didn't fit with everything that we were doing.
Yeah.
So Burnley brand was like an experimental component. Like it really is a creative outlet to be able to mess around with product design, production. Like we moved away from the term mid-tech because I felt it was really nebulous, and I'm like, we haven't, like, our brand can support like production.
Yeah.
Like I was comfortable saying that, like, yeah, we make this knife, it's a production knife. I make this knife, it's a custom.
Totally.
So Burnley was just kind of like that.
When you are working in your shop, you know, you're making knives for CRKT and Boker.
Yep.
You're making things for Burnley brand. Do you like to work in a space where those two things are mixing, like design wise, or do you need to stay in a lane?
No, it's all kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
It actually can be like pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because they are different. Well, production design for like CRKT and Boker is different than production design for Burnley brand, is different than my custom work, but they kind of all feed each other.
Sure.
Some of them have different end expectations.
Yeah.
I know, like, for instance, like as a custom maker, I can make anything I want, as weird as I want, and there's going to be someone who enjoys it, right? There's going to be I can do super experimental work. That's not the case if I'm going to design a knife for production for CRKT.
Right.
Right. In that case, it has to be something that is, kind of what I consider like universal design, something that like a broad swath of the population is going to find like attractive and functional.
Yeah.
And like Burnley brand is like in the middle of those two things. Like we get to play a lot, and I get to do ridiculous, like, bottle openers with like diamonds in them and stuff like that. But it's still, there's different thought process. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a lot. Holy cow. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like when I'm video editing, please don't put like a graphics project in front of me. Like I need to be in this mindset.
Yeah.
But gosh, I love it when I'm doing this for a week and I can just jump off and do something else for a week. Like it engages a different part of my brain. It's like a nice vacation for a bit.
Yeah. I think that's like a creative struggle in general, is how to organize different types of projects, and I'm still trying to figure out like what our flow is.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I like to if I can hit a project where I can work in it long enough to like kind of like reach like a flow state kind of thought process, like where the work is moving consistently. I know what my job is, and I don't have external distraction.
Yeah, sure.
CAD things, especially like CAD, are it's really important. So computer aided design.
Yeah.
If I'm jumping around, like I can't do that and then also be working in the shop. Like it's separated.
Sure.
So we've tried like the first 4 hours of a day in the shop. I've tried the first like 2 days of the week in the shop.
Sure,
and like,
sure.
okay, the next 2 days will be CAD. We still haven't figured out like.
Okay, so you've tried a bunch of different things though.
I've been trying them since probably I was like 25.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh,
Well, it's crazy. Like, you know, I've been self-employed for so long. Like, I think that there's actually this desire to create like structure of like a company structure in like this very small microcosm, but it's tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine. Add a couple kids in there, right? And it's just
that's been that's a whole nother level, because so much of, I think, of what has driven me over the years is like there's like almost like an obsessive quality of it, where I get super interested and I go down the rabbit hole. With kids, I can't do it to the same level, because like it's not me losing sleep or like me not seeing my friends, it's them not seeing me. And so it's like actually figuring out how to create that creative process and productive process with like different constraints. Sure. It's a trip.
Yeah. And then same like too, like as a dad, like integrating them into that process too, right? Yeah. So I'm curious too, like for me, I hit creative walls all the time. Yeah. Like what do you do in those moments when it's just like you're burnt out? And do you have exercises you do? Do you go on a walk? Is there other things you do that clear your mind?
Yeah, and I mean the nice thing with the work is I've created a system where there's like it's the blessing and the curse. There's so many things that are different to work on. I can switch like modalities of work. Yeah. Right. So like recently I started setting up a hot work area so I can do forging. Like forging compared to like designing in CAD and running parts on a CNC, like totally different parts of the brain. Yep. But the goal is that I'm able to maintain like productivity when I'm feeling that hard shift of like, I can't look at a computer screen anymore. Like, cool, I'm just going to go like squish some metal. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And then, I mean, that's like we could have a whole conversation on that. Like the idea of burnout and like maintenance. Yeah. It's hard. So like physical stuff, like I try to surf as much as I can. That's like the one thing I do where like I can really let go of like, I don't think about anything else. Yep. Yeah, it's hard, man. Burnout. Yeah.
Cool.
It's a loaded question. I went through really bad, like actual burnout a few years ago, like post-move kids and like in the pandemic. Sure. And like the process, I'm just like thinking about it, the process of like getting out of it and like moving past it. It's a lot. Yeah. You know? Oh yeah. So this is a prime example of something that I would make when I'm burnout and I need a break. Yeah. So this is like basically just walk out to the shop, grab a piece of paper and a little stack of materials, and then just make something. So like if you're working with natural materials, a lot of times you're working around like the natural material. Yeah, sure. So I had these little sandbar stag points. Right. But they're tiny. So you build a tiny knife based on a tiny piece of antler. Sure. Yeah, it is super cool. I mean, wish you guys could feel it, but it just feels so good in my hand. It's the perfect size. It's got the old school. It's got the sweet, you know, what is this, Damascus? Yep. Yeah, Damasteel. Damasteel. Well, and like working in like old materials, so like stag and brass like is about as classic as it gets. Yeah. And then that little ferrule is zirconium, which is a reactive metal. And it's crazy. Like you heat it up, cherry red, it builds a perfect black oxide layer. Oh, it's like 70 Rockwell. Yeah. But that's like aerospace materials, you know? So it's fun to work in different materials, but like trying to get them to still feel cohesive. Yeah, for sure. I think is the. I think you nailed it on this one. Thanks, man. Yeah, this one's super cool. Yeah, those are my little those are like my decompress projects.
Yeah.
I would like to do more. You know, that the idea of like running a business as a creative and like making things as a creative are like not always like super conducive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Sometimes you just have to like do projects like just for you.
Oh, so there's a conversation we could have for a while too. Like, if I don't do those every once in a while, I will go crazy.
Yeah, go crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I started doing a project with a friend over in Tennessee where it was like, let's build a brand every week and just make stuff for it. And it doesn't have to. You make it, I'll make it. We'll post it on the same day, and then we'll just have fun with it. And we don't
That's
even.
amazing.
We don't. You know, we give the company a name, where it's from. And then it's just so funny to see how each one of us like approaches it. But it's so liberating.
Are you still
and free.
doing it? Or,
Well, I haven't had time.
Yeah,
right?
that's the thing. The
I've
time.
been-
There's so many like ideas and like, yeah.
And it became kind of this like, I started feeling the pressure, like, oh shoot, we're doing it again this week.
Yeah,
and
one
I
a
gotta-
week is insanity.
But for a while, it was really fun, and I hope, you know, Dalton, if you're watching, like, well, let's get back to it. But you know, but it is. It's. I need them.
Yeah.
You know, I think every creative does.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good having somewhere to go.
Yeah.
We were like talking about Draplin. Like I look at like his work, and it's just so interesting to me. Like it just seems so fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's a machine.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
that type of creativity where it's just like he just seems like, and I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
It just seems like process.
Well, totally.
It's impressive.
And I think he's gotten to a place where he's so dialed in
Right.
what he does that he's just like, I want a patch with a taco on
I
it,
know.
and he makes it, and then
Instantly.
he puts it on a hat, he puts
Yeah.
it on a pin, he puts it on a
Yeah.
whatever, and you know, gosh darn it, if it doesn't
Yeah.
look awesome.
Yeah, I
And, you
know.
know. Anyways, dude, thanks for
Yeah, of
chatting
course.
with me. This is fun. It's fun for me to be on this side of the camera. I thought it was going to be really nerve-wracking, but it's
That's
actually-
about like when it's just conversation. It's like pretty easy to be on camera.
Yeah, it's not too
It's a
bad.
different-
I don't know why they always complain about
Yeah.
it. Josh and Kyla.
No.
But anyways, thanks for watching. This was cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna have more videos in this series with Lucas. So please, you know, send us a comment. You know, anyways, we'll stay around for the next one.
Yeah. Let me know if you guys got any questions for me.